Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to a brand new console art. We finished up the police case files and Kaidoboshi, and now we're diving into Tokihogushi. Hopefully I'm saying that right, it sounds kind of weird. I think this is I don't know if this is connected to these two arts. My initial, this is a whole ass new character. I thought this might be Aoi, the girl that killed her family in this, but I feel like the Kaidoboshi kind of wrapped up the story nicely, so I don't really know what it would be like, but I guess we'll have to find out. Let's get into it. We are in our 7th arc, man. Out of what? How many are there? 6, 7, 14. We're getting there. We're literally on the halfway point. I'm sure this and probably the epilogue are shorter. Like the police case files was really short. But yeah, let's check it out. Ooh, graveyard. Untangling. This arc is the 3rd. Okay, so it is part of it. It can be read after completing Sumitsushi, Kaidoboshi, and Minaguroshi. In October 1982, Tomoe Minai is investigating a mysterious death that she believes is somehow connected to Reina Ryudu. What the heck? Tomoe is back? Tomoe POV? And a Reina. That's interesting. I don't wonder what that's going to be about. Let's go! If you speak of justice, the others will laugh at you. What a naive, helpless thing to say. If you speak of evil, others will berate you. What a callous, cruel thing to say. If you say nothing, nothing will be said. So in the end, everyone remains silent. So deep. I mean, it's kind of deep. The last one's kind of a meme. Oh my god, she's alive? You'll love to see it. She was alive in police case files, too. Hopefully there's a world where Natsumi can be happy and at the same time Tomoe doesn't die. That would be blessed. Anyways, it's Madonka. After finishing her daily workload and making her way down the hallway, she could hear someone else walking beyond a distant corner. They said 1982. I wish I knew dates where this relates to Kaidoboshi and Sumitsushi. Actually, we might as well just look it up. Higurashi Consul Artsu. Wiki. I just wanna look up the dates, to be honest. So Sumitsushi, Kaidoboshi, Tokihogushi. Did it say autumn 1982's Tokihogushi? Sumitsushi is... I don't see a date. Kaidoboshi, date me? 1983. Oh, so Kaidoboshi and Sumitsushi took place a year after? I mean, I guess that would make sense if she dies. But why would she be investigating it? Anyway, I guess we'll see. I was just interested. It was just a hunch, but she stopped and listened more carefully. Then she heard a faint but dignified sounding voice greeting someone by saying, "Thank you for your hard work." As soon as she recognized her sister's voice, Madoka snapped her fingers and said, "Aha!" Before long, she noticed the signs of that person approaching the corner. Sensing an opportunity to catch her by surprise, Madoka lightly smiled to herself, then cleared her throat and took a breath. Hello. Whoa. Slapped? Madoka greeted her using the title she was finally starting to get used to, but as soon as she got a good look, she screamed. And then some of the officials who were walking and talking alongside her stopped and looked startled. Disheveled, probably. She's alive! It's great to hear Tomoe again. Her death was pretty sad. Naturally, Madoka raised her voice as she said that. Glad to hear this song again. This is my favorite song from these arts. It just goes kind of hard, honestly. Because once she was standing face to face with the person she was waiting for, her sister Tomoe's dress and appearance looked positively frightening. Suffice to say, it was awful, atrocious. One of her jacket sleeves was torn off, and the blouse below was torn as well. Not only that, but she could see several red cuts along the bare skin there, and scratches and welts too. Her hair was a mess, and a red stain that was clearly blood was spread across her neck, and there was a bandage that fits near her mouth to stop the bleeding. On top of that, a tissue was packed into one of her nostrils. Jesus. You better. Madoka looking in the future? No, I shouldn't make that joke. It happens. Oh, the tissue. One of the tissues fell out as she said that, and she caught it in one hand, still in good condition. The traces of blood beneath her nose looked stupidly painful. She was at her wit's end trying to deal with this woman. Although it could be biased speaking, Madoka thought her sister Tomoe definitely fit the bill to be called a beautiful woman. Her short-trimmed hair gave an androgynous impression, but compared to female analysts and corporate secretaries, her neat intellectual appearance couldn't help but attract attention regardless of gender. Wowee. As a result, overreaching bachelors among her superiors, subordinates, and even colleagues secretly aimed for her ever since she was appointed to the station. So many that they couldn't be counted on two hands. Jesus. But despite that, Tomoe insisted on walking around in a shabby condition like this, like some kind of third-rate actor. If anyone who had a crush on her saw her like this, they'd probably become disillusioned, and might even lose their trust in women. Bro, you can't give the fucking otaku voices to the detectives. It's actually the otaku voices, right? The meme voices. Feeling distraught, the men seem to be chanting some kind of Buddhist prayer while quickly making their escape. Hopefully that strange trauma doesn't take their future perception of women. Pray for it. It does, and they become otakus. Unlucky. Then Madoka noticed Tomoe's detective partner staying behind her and turned to vent anger at him. My boy Fujita. Yep.
なのにちゃんとしてくれなきゃ困りま。
But after yelling at him, something looked off about his expression, so she tilted her head to the side. The detective named Fujita quietly drooped his shoulders with a pale, completely exhausted look on his face, as if he had just remembered, or as if he had just returned from hell itself. Or rather, it seemed like he had so little presence here that he was liable to vanish at any moment.
藤田さん？
It's rough.
おーい。無駄よ。今の藤田君、死刑宣告よりも恐ろしい言葉を山のように食らって返事をしないただの屍状態だから。はあ？
It was getting harder and harder to understand.
まあいいわ。とにかくこのまま課長のところに行くわけにもいかないし、ちょっと着替えてくる。まどか、悪いけどそのゾンビ君、刑事一家まで連れて行って。
Zombie kun.
よろしくね。あ、ちょっと。行っちゃった。って自分こそ区別全然できてない。
You're not even doing anything. While grumbling to herself, Madoka pulled out a police notebook and recorded the date, time, and place Tomoe just mentioned. Ever since Tomoe was reassigned to Tokihogushi Station, she was very careful not to refer to her sister as Madoka during official duties. Perhaps Tomoe intended to use it as a countermeasure if they ever got into an argument, but there was no time for that. Bro, my guy's actually dying. Madoka couldn't help but sigh at the completely unimaginable situation. October 1982. Nearly 2 months had passed since Tomoe completed her training with the National Police Agency and transferred to Tokihogushi Station. Tomoe's official title was 3rd Wide Area Subsection Chief of the 1st Division of Chubu Region of the National Police Agency. Put that on your fucking name tag. An extremely long title, but in short, she was responsible for investigating cases involving multiple prefectures and areas within the Chubu region, coordinating and directing the activities of each prefectural police department involved. And with Tokihogushi Station, she was appointed to the title of Assistant Director. That put her at a higher position than the section chief of a mid-sized police station, which meant she had the 3rd highest rank here, just behind the chief and the deputy chief, allegedly. However, almost everyone who saw her official title reacted by saying, "How unfortunate." These people are jelly, man. She's a beast.
確かに修学旅行の行き先がウバステ山になったようなもんだからな。
What that? What? Can we talk about that more? That should be looked into as a police force if there's a mountain where people just abandon old people there. After all, the title Assistant Director wasn't listed anywhere in the police regulations. It was invented to suit this particular purpose. It's not unusual for the National Police Agency to dispatch their executive candidate to small and medium-sized jurisdictions as part of their training. The goal is to help them advance their career by gaining valuable experience conducting real on-site investigations. However, even though the candidates in these cases are often knowledgeable, they tend to come with a strong sense of elitism, so they rarely know when to shut their mouths or accept discipline. On top of that, they often engage in passionate, antagonistic speech and conduct themselves to feel more important, which becomes a nuance for those around them. Being bossed around by some young know-it-all can't be fun for detectives with experience in the field. So instead of welcoming them with an open attitude, they scornfully refer to those candidates as field trip students behind their backs. Of course, the detectives on site embraced similar feelings toward Tomoe when she first arrived. Even though she was a beautiful young lady, they had an unfavorable opinion of her. However, once they heard stories about how Tomoe was assigned the assistant director post, they couldn't help but sympathize and asked, "Aren't you pushing yourself too hard?"
次長って役職まだあったんだな。この5年間ずっと空席だったからてっきり廃止されたと思ってたぜ。
6年だろ。確か最後になったやつって堀口のじい様だったはずだからな。
そうだそうだ、思い出した。とりあえずラッキーで昇進試験受かって警部になったけど、全然結果出せなくて課長補佐止まりで、定年前の1年だけ箔付けについたって話だぜ。
ああ、そういやあったな、そんな噂が。実際あの堀口のじいさんって次長になってから毎日暇そうに机に座って新聞ばっか読んでたっけ。
いくら使えないからって一日中やる仕事もないってのは見ていてちょっと気の毒だったな。
It wasn't an official position anyway, so it had no authority over the detectives within the station, and more importantly, it had no actual responsibilities. And on top of that, the role didn't command any subordinate detectives. It was an honorary position that simply left them hanging there.
いくら給料ただ取りでもあの次長職だけは俺はごめんだね。それにしても一体どうしてこんな人事になったんだ。
畑副所長の意向だよ。仮にも中央の幹部候補生さんに合うようなポストが課長補佐では低すぎるってのが理由だとさ。
低いも何もだからって窓際に置くか普通。
Ordinarily, it's customary for quasi-career group detectives at the chief inspector level to be assigned a post supporting the section-chief of Criminal Investigation Division. Indeed, when a case springs up requiring a wide area investigator's involvement, that position that can give orders to everyone involved, even as high as the chief of the precinct. Although that only happens when an incident like that one occurs. Nevertheless, being placed in a position outside the norm is an unusual deviation and seemingly driven by malicious intentions.
仕方ないさ。あの子って確か山沖所長直々の招聘って話だろ。ということは副所長が早速目をつけて飛ばしたってことだよ。
またそれかよ。たくこんな小さな警察署で何派閥作っていがみ合ってんだか。バカバカしくないのかね。
まったくだ。
Even though they're thinking that, none of them were willing to stand up and oppose it. Classic. After all, getting involved would be like eavesdropping on someone else's affairs. It would earn the ire of upper management. Tomoe will return to her former post at the National Police Agency as soon as the training period ends, in which case there's no point fighting a righteous battle of justice. That was why everyone else simply watched from afar and didn't get themselves involved. Getting involved was taking a gamble on how it would play out.
で、あの修学旅行生さんはどう出ると思う？
ま、順当な線では中部管区局のお偉方が
Surely.
そんでその後はどこか別の署に配置換えになるって流れだろう。
いや、それだとわざわざ研修出向で呼び寄せた所長のメンツが立たないぜ。俺はとりあえず何かの実績に便乗するまで長いバカンスだと思って適当に過ごすと思うけどな。現場で活躍することなんて上は求めてないんだからさ。
どうかな。キャリアウーマンってのはとにかく男社会に対して攻撃的で自意識過剰だからな。
These guys seem like very pleasant people
下にもぶつかって盛大に空回りし続けるん
to
じゃない
hang
か。
around with.
で、プライドがガタガタになって落ち込んでる彼女を慰めて口説いちまうってか。ドラマの見過ぎだっての。
いいじゃねえか。気は強そうだけどあの子結構レベル高いぜ。ま、そうでなくても誰が落とすかそれも見ものさ。
But of course, the arbitrary predictions those detectives made were ultimately betrayed at a later date. Tomoe wasn't the pale-faced weakling they had grown accustomed to from elite course members. And she wasn't a coward or willing to back down, she was elite in the truest sense. Owned.
あの小娘がまたお手柄か。
Okabe.
まったく腹の立つ話だな、小島君。
Hate her when they think her weak, hate her when she's strong.
おっしゃる通りです。これはちょっと我々の想像を超えていましたね。
想像も何も悪運が強いと感心しているだけだ。
The Section-Chief of the Second Criminal Investigation Division, Okabe, irritatedly leaned back into his armchair while sipping down his lukewarm tea. Standing at the ready beside him was his right-hand man, a shabby-looking flunky known as Deputy Section-Chief Kojima. Tokihogushi City has enjoyed accelerating population growth as a commuter town in recent years, thanks to the construction of the Tokihogushi Airport, the largest in the Chubu region. The Tokihogushi Police Station was in charge of all cases in the area, so the Criminal Investigation Department had to be divided in two in order to manage a large quantity of cases and investigators. The first Criminal Investigation Division is headed by the mild-mannered Section Chief Yamamura. And the second Criminal Investigation Division has Section Chief Okabe at the top. At the moment, the former is responsible for burglary and general enforcement, and the latter handles intelligence and violent cases, although in a city this size it can be difficult to clearly distinguish the two. So in reality, their investigation activities compete with one another for territory, and the detectives belonging to each party despise those in the other party. They felt like cats and dogs. That's why Division Chief Okabe's mood would sour any time the first division performed well.
今日しつかまえたやつは例の密売グループの重要参考人という話じゃないか。これで先月に続いて今月も一家の奴らにでかい顔をされるな。二課の連中は何をやっていた？
あ、はい。二課の捜査員は今、先日県警本部が立ち上げた合同捜査本部のもろもろ雑用に駆り出されて、大半がかかりっきりになっています。それで他の捜査の処理が遅れていて。
ああ、わかった。もういい。
Okabe bitterly spat the words out. When the prefectural headquarters submitted a request for a joint investigation, he was the one who pushed for the second division to handle it in the first place, hoping to earn points in the progress. So hearing that the delay in the proceedings was ultimately his fault only worsened his mood. Owned? Again? Tomoe putting it on her back, to be honest.
実績に残らない事件については確認できるだけでも4件。おかげで機動捜査隊の早見隊長などは彼女のことを姫と呼んで相当に目をかけているそうです。
Princess.
姫か。
It's a weird name for her.
バカバカしいほどご体操な呼び名だな。
それだけ実力を認めているということだと思います。実際県警の堂島課長は非公式ではありますが山沖所長に彼女の捜査一課での引き受けを本気で打診したとのことで。
酒の席での社交辞令だよ。それを聞いていた噂好きが面白おかしく誇張して広めただけだ。
Surely.
それほど県警本部は人材不足というわけではないしな。
Although, if she kept at the current pace, she was likely to receive an invitation to Prefectural Police HQ after training. Even if it was just lip service, it was proof that her work had attracted their attention. Plus, even though Okabe mentioned luck earlier, there's no denying she had the skills to back it up. She was definitely one of the most talented people here. After all, her father was a well-known officer at the Metropolitan Police Agency Public Security Division, respected by superiors and subordinates alike, Detective Yusuke Minai. I wonder if we'll learn more about what happened to him, because they kind of laid down the mystery last arc and we just didn't learn anything about it. Or they didn't resolve anything about it, I guess. He lost his life in a fire 11 years ago, but his will lives on in his daughter Tomoe. Her time as an officer earned the attention of her father's former bosses and colleagues, including some powerful people. She also passes her promotion test with top marks every single time, and she majored in psychology and did language studies at a national university, so she was capable of fluently explaining investigation policies to others. Additionally, she kept herself busy writing numerous papers on improving investigation methodology. Professional police staff always assessed her well when reporting back to the National Police Agency. She was a gifted woman. In fact, her exceptional evaluations alone were enough to carry her through national tests. She was on the quasi-career path, but if she had taken the national tests on the career path, she would have probably been serving as a police bureaucrat by now. In other words, the only bottleneck in Tomoe's career advancement was the fact that she was a woman. Beyond that, there's nothing mysterious about her success. Yep, at least he knows. Recognizes real. The National Police Agency trained specialists in the recommended group, which they handpicked from the jurisdiction offices, the so-called quasi-career path. I think this is the most I've said quasi-career path, or just quasi in general, like ever in my life. Tomoe making it through the narrow gate at such a young age caused a scandal, since it essentially promised a promotion to the role of police inspector. But Okabe had a completely different outlook, since he believed the police should promote people after years of service, regardless of how hard they worked, and give them a warm reception at retirement. I mean, I didn't see that being true, but I think that it can be both things, right? Like, you should give people promotions, if they've worked for the job for so long, just, to appreciate the time and the years of their life they put into working. But I also do believe that people who just work harder and do better should probably also be promoted at the same time. They can both be true. Thinking about it made him feel downhearted. The police force is an organization where academic background and starting position matter more than performance and experience. And when it comes to personal administration, career advancement is often determined by more political factions and power relations. That's probably true in most police settings, and I agree that is bullshit. So I get his thing where if people worked for a long time instead of just, nepotism and shit like that, they should get promoted too. I just also think that talent and just hard grinding should also make connections. I feel like there's some spots open for nepotism as long as they actually pull the weight. But yeah, it's complicated, I guess. In fact, Tomoe received a major boost for attending Kashima University following the advice of other alumni. As a result, Okabe was unable to set aside the jealousy from his inferiority to this blessed little girl. He was deeply frustrated. Jesus. So he recognizes that she's awesome at her job, but he's just also mad at the same time, which I actually think is kind of fair. I can see that as a real life thing. You're like, oh, this person's so much better than you, but you're also mad at the same time. I feel like it's a human reaction.
今までの修学旅行生とは違うと申しております。それは私に見る目がなかったと言いたいのか？いえ、そういうことでは。 あくまでも現場の連中がそう漏らしていたという話で。
Tojima got flustered and started making excuses after Otobe scornfully glared at him. For someone who so normally loyal to him as Tojima, to say that meant the things he said. Oh my god, what am I reading? For someone so normally loyal to him as Tojima, to say that meant the things he said here could very well be cause for concern. Sorry, am I having a stroke? For someone so normally loyal to him as Tojima, to say that meant the things he said here. That's not a real sentence, right? Right? Am I crazy? To say that meant the things he said here could very well be considered for concern. Translate better. Even though I think they're doing it for free. I don't know if they're... I bet they're not doing it for free. They probably had a Patreon, right? I'm actually interested in a 7th. What's it called? 7th translation? Oh, whatever. It doesn't matter. Thank you for translating the game since, you know, it wasn't picked up by Manga Gamer, the console arts, but also fits your fucking game. I appreciate you and I'm criticizing you. Teehee. Chief Yamotai came here from Central 1 year ago and was clearly on bad terms with Deputy Chief Hata, who was a local rising through the ranks. Rumors allege that the personal staff aggressively pushed to have Yamotai transferred here from his former post at Public Security, which completely eliminated Hata's chances from becoming the next chief. And from then on, the police department was clearly divided into two factions, with Otobe and the 2nd Division detectives supporting the deputy chief's faction, and the General Affairs and Transportation Division supporting the chief's faction. Meanwhile, the 1st Criminal Division, headed by Section Chief Yamamura, tried to stay out of the faction wars and place themselves in the neutral faction, base centrists. But Hata was still worried they would lean toward the chief's faction at some point in the future. And as a result, he was staunchly opposed to the chief's proposed assigning Tomoe at a post at Higurashi Station, assisting the section chief of the 1st Division. True. No matter how good she is, she's a female. I think people who are working really hard are seeming too heavy a burden. They should work less. Insane. The mental gymnastics. And so on, he continued rattling off reasons. However, Hata believed Tomoe to be a member of the chief's faction, so his real intention was to separate Tomoe from the 1st Division and stop Chief Yamotai from expanding his influence. Although Otobe was also opposed to transferring her to the 2nd Division, even if that would place her under the deputy chief's faction. That is because her abilities were still unknown. It was a big risk to bring aboard someone as inexperienced as her, and if she screwed up, he was concerned that she could do something to damage his image. But above all else, he'd simply underestimated her. And as a result, Hata strongly campaigned for Tomoe to be given the honorary assistant director post, a do-nothing position intended to keep her out of the way. However, Hata and Otobe miscalculated. They thought Yamamura was neutral, but he suddenly invited Tomoe to serve as the chief of special affairs within the 1st Division, delegating her investigative authority. Probably because you guys keep doing some petty shit, okay? Trying to lock up Tomoe when she's popping off. Incidentally, the title of Chief of Special Affairs is a specially appointed role, originally intended for experienced police officers to serve as an advisor to the section chief on a part-time basis, allegedly. However, the role was originally designed to be given to retirees, so very few active duty police officers have been given that position at all.
現場の連中にもその実行がどんなものかを実際に学ばせるいい機会だと思います。
She watched a lot of Criminal Minds in the future. I guess it wasn't out yet. But as a result, he completely withdrew from the investigation activities and essentially retired from the front lines, leaving Tomoe as the effective leader of the 1st Division. Based, Yamamura was carrying out an outright act of rebellion against the likes of Hata and Okabe, whose disgustingly uptight personalities were quick to harass these field trip students. Actually based. However, how many times have we said however in this chapter? Like 10? They're loving it. They're loving this structure. However, that decision proved to the efficacy of Tomoe's behavioral analysis, investigation methodology in no time at all. Consequently, the 1st Division's performance improved remarkably within just a single month. Even Yamamura was astonished by how much the results exceeded his expectations. If only you guys didn't try to lock her away in a dog shit role. He bitterly lamented the mistake he made back then. If Tomoe had been assigned to the 2nd Division, the department would have had an excellent assistant for the section chief, rather than a man like Kojima who blindly followed orders. Rip. Their evaluations would have been completely reversed. And even if that wasn't the case, he would have had the power to limit her actions. But Okabe also understood the folly of looking at things in hindsight. True.
いや、ずっと不思議に思っていることなんですが、南次長と山脇所長はどうしてあんなにもいがみ合っているのでしょうか。
He's banging her little sister.
常識的に考えても所長派であればあの言動は
そんなもの単なる周囲へのパフォーマンスだよ。なんせあの小娘の妹は。
Oh. After changing clothes and walking down the hallway, Tomoe held her hand to her nose and squeezed. As soon as she did, the remnants of her earlier nosebleed came out and the smell put a frown on her face. Yes. Tomoe suddenly shook her head for saying something so ridiculous. One of her defining principles was not to believe in superstition. What the heck? Madoka in her casual drip for the first time. I don't know if I'm digging it. It doesn't look as good. She looks flatter. Literally. Though I do think the belt is kind of swaggy, honestly. And I kind of like the jacket. As Tomoe opened the door to the break room, Madoka got up from one of the seats and called out to her. Was she ready to head out for the day? She was already dressed in civilian clothes. Madoka shrugged her shoulders and bitterly smiled as she said that. Her face looked fatigued, so it seemed reasonable for her to be agitated. Man has PTSD, man. He's a broken man. Well, the truth is, she intended to say that a bit sarcastically, but Fujita's depression made it hard to lash out at him full demon style. Tomoe brought a can of coffee from the vending machine while muttering that to herself. She immediately pushed the hot button before remembering that it was already autumn. Tomoe inserted a coin and pushed the button for oolong tea. Once the sound of the falling can rang out, she grabbed the can and tossed it with a flick of her wrist.
と、あ、お金はいらないわよ。ま、私からの残業代ってことでどう？あの泣き言を延々聞かされた代価がこれ。
What do you mean? It's a free drink. Oolong tea. Madoka pulled the tab as she said that, then chugged 2 big gulps. The cold sensation across her throat felt comforting.
にしてもまあ、お姉ちゃんも災難だね。まさか藤田さんと一緒に張り込みしているところを浮気現場と間違えられる。
Jesus.
何やってたの？別に変なことはしてないわよ。ちょっと周りの騒音がひどかったから耳元に顔を寄せて話してたのが。
Yeah.
キスしてるように見られたってわけね。
Oh no. And the wife caught it?
なんとまあお約束な。
Even hearing it again, it was a ludicrous story. Recently, his wife had started to become suspicious of him, saying he was working overtime and coming home late, so she started following him. Oh, we're getting the backstory to the wife encounter. Nice. Well, that didn't seem like an unusual thing for a jealous woman to do. However, she pushed herself into their secret meeting place at a coffee shop, which was actually a stakeout, and released her full fury on Tomoe based on the misunderstanding that she was his mistress. Naturally, Madoka was amazed. It would have been nice to get an actual explanation for stooping to such measures.
藤田さんの奥さんって焼きもち焼きっていうかすごい人みたいだね。なんでまあそんなきっつい人と一緒になろうって思ったのやら。小学校からの幼馴染らしいわよ。
Yeah, you know, it sounds kind of crazy, but shouldn't be too judgy.
それとその言い方はやめなさい。あんただって他人のことが言えるわけ？
Owned.
おっといけねえ。
Madoka quietly backed off when she noticed her jab cut deeper than expected. After all, as far as the public was concerned, Madoka's partner was even more surprising.
で、喫茶店で激しい口論となり、しらば劇となったところで、重要参考人が偶然喫茶店を訪問。
It's pretty unlucky.
そしてうっかり張り込み中だと藤田さんが口にしたのを聞かれて、刑事がいるとバレて逃げられた。そのまま追っかけっこの始まり。さすがに引っ込みがつかなくてね。このまま逃げられたら絶対警戒されて証拠物も隠滅される可能性があったし、一か八かだったけど。
Fair enough.
さらっと流すなよ。
Madoka dejectedly drooped her shoulders. As usual, she couldn't take a joke. Still, Tomoe came out ahead on that risky bet. The witness drew a knife while trying to resist, and the violation of the swords and firearm control law allowed them to search his pockets. And as luck would have it, they found a business notebook and evidence among his belongings. They later found out he was stopping at the coffee shop to make a call on his way to meet a business partner. Although Prefectural Police HQ had already had a head start on the case, handing the culprit over hastened the resolution of a big-name drug trading operation. Nice.
でも、その頃藤田さんは地獄だったんだって？どんな感じだったの？
He'll be fine.
戻った時には奥さんを。
Oh no.
藤田君は床に体育座りしてたからな。マスターの話だと、お決まりのあなたを殺して私は逃げるが始まっていたらしいわよ。いや、私も死ぬの間違いでしょ。逃げてどうするのよ。
She unceremoniously threw that out and let out a heavy sigh. That was Fujita being Fujita and Sis being Sis. It was all just speculation, but Madoka could understand how both of them were thinking. Indeed, if you saw your husband having a good time with another woman, prettier than you, what that? Do you even know what she looks like? She could be hot. You'd inevitably fall into a panic and feel self-conscious.
古風な考え方のくせに自分が美人だって自覚が全然ないからな。
Her sister's sin was failing to recognize how good she actually looked. That's why she could never imagine herself getting caught up in matters of love. If only she recognized herself a little better as a woman.
にしてもよく捕まえられたよね。犯人って元陸上の県代表だったんでしょ？
Ooh, well,
陸上っていうなら私だってそうよ。
they did talk about that too.
しかもこっちの方が年は若くて持久力もあるんだからね。走り高跳びと持久力ってなんか関係あったっけ？
Still have to make a running start.
冗談よ。
And it's also a joke, idiot.
さらっと流しなさいっての。お姉ちゃんのジョークは分かりにくいんだよ。
As she said that, Madoka was too embarrassed to tell her sister she expected as much. It would be impossible for an ordinary detective to track down and catch a perpetrator with an intimate knowledge of the area who was capable of breaking through a blockade. And when a retreating opponent draws a military knife, it would be absurd to fight them off completely barehanded, not even armed with a baton. She apprehended him anyway. It was amazing.
だからといって見習う気にはなれないけどね。
Indeed, Sis was Sis and Madoka was Madoka. Her sister probably felt the same way. She couldn't impose her values about police duties on others. Madoka was thankful for that.
ところで。え？さっき今夜これから外食だって言ってたわよね。相手は誰？ まさか一人で食べる。
She awkwardly laughed while chiding herself deep in her heart. As expected of the shrewd, best-in-class princess of the Tokihogushi station, a trifling misstatement could cost you your life.
その
Ba, 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 ba.
だから言っておくけど嘘を言ったら怒るわよ。本当のことを言ったら
Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba.
ただしある条件については無条件に怒る。いや、その
Madoka was confident of the current situation fit into those certain circumstances, so she darted her eyes back and forth, stuck in place, unable to tell the truth or a lie. Enough. She wished their values matched up when it came to this too.
うまい言い逃れの方法ってあるわけね。
She tried to think of the name of another colleague, anyone appropriate, but she quickly gave up on that idea. She had used that trick before and didn't transpire the next day. Tomoe was unreasonably upset. If this was anything like that case, Madoka would deeply regret it later on.
お姉ちゃん誤解してるよ。本当普段はああだけど全然悪い人じゃないんだから。そりゃもう今晩行くところだってきちんとしたところで。
No good. No matter what she said, it was useless. With that in mind, Madoka was already thinking about what she should say to apologize to her partner, Yamokai, who was already waiting for her.
いいわ。
Weh. But surprisingly enough, that was a good eh. Weh. Tomoe was unnaturally conciliatory and didn't pry any further. After that reaction, Madoka turned and blankly stared in her direction.
なんなら近くまで送っていってあげようか。いや、それはいいけど。っていうか行ってもいいの？いいも何も、もう予約しているんでしょ。もったいないし、行ってきたら？
True.
あ、うん。そうするね。
At least she nodded. Madoka gazed at Tomoe, not with partial trust, but with full-blown suspicion. It was weird. She was unusually understanding, extremely so. It was well known that within the station that Tomoe was fiercely opposed to Madota's engagement to Chief Yamotai. Earlier, she got into an argument with Madota inside the chief's office and made a huge uproar, ranting about saying things like, "Think about his age. He's a senile old man."
普通の警察署なら間違いなく懲戒食らってるよね。
And with that in mind somehow, Madoka felt like acting on Tomoe's words and would be falling into a trap. She felt anxious.
お姉ちゃん、分かってるよね。今日一緒に行くのってカオルさんなんだけど。だから？
Oh?
いや、だから
What could she do? She had absolutely no idea if this conversation was a trap. Should she accept it at face value and thank her for her trust before going, or maybe...
何深読みしてるのよ。私は普通に行ってらっしゃいと言ってるの。え？
She's just being nice. Somehow. This is actually kind of surprising, to be honest. But, you know, different fragment, maybe different personality. A bit. Tomoe let out a sigh and turned to Madoka. This is the fragment effect. She was Adra at Yamotai the whole time, and now in the new one she's chill. More chill about it, anyways. Then she shrugged on her shoulders and gently fiddled with the empty coffee can in her hand and spoke up.
まあ、いくら姉妹でも他人の恋愛に口を出すのってみっともないしね。言いたいことは言ったつもりだし、あとはあんたの見る目に任せるわ。それって結婚に関してはともかく、交際のことはこれ以上私は何も言わない。応援はさすがにしたくないけど邪魔もしない。結局最後はまどか次第だもんね。お姉ちゃん。
What the heck does that sound effect? A gleeful smile spread across Madoka's face, and she struggled to hold back the tears welling up in her eyes. If anyone else had heard that, it probably wouldn't have been a big deal. But still, this was the first time Tomoe ever showed a positive attitude toward their relationship. Of course, it was a rather sudden development, and she was still baffled. Plus, she still didn't understand what inspired this change in her sister. But she was thankful to hear her say it, and she was glad.
じゃあ行ってくる。ありがとうね、お姉ちゃん。あ、まどか。何？ううん、なんでもない。行ってらっしゃい。
Then Madoka leapt out of the break room at a quick pace.
また聞けなかった。
She sank deeply in the cheap armchair, leaned back, and looked up at the ceiling. The flickering fluorescent lights flashed the shadows of the buds flying near the lights. Even though it should be hot enough to burn them, they couldn't defy their instinctual attraction to the light. Tomoe bitterly smiled as she watched that, then let out a heavy sigh.
悪い人じゃないか。知ってるわよ。あんたよりも長いんだから。
As Madoka already knew, Tomoe had known Yamotai for even longer than her. If Madoka knew him for 2 or 3 years, Tomoe was acquainted with him for roughly double that. They were acquainted before she even became a police officer.
だからこそなんだけどな。
The difference in age was still acceptable. There were various circumstances making her feel hesitant, but she could be convinced. But were the rumors whispered about her and the Chief Yamotai actually true, or an unfounded lie? Even now, Tomoe was worried that the truth had eluded her this whole time.
姉の出世のために所長をたぶらかした。
Nah, no shot. The explanation seemed absurd, but Tomoe wasn't confident enough to disregard it. In reality, Tomoe was chosen for the National Police Agency's recommendation group from her post in Ibaraki last summer. Additionally, Yamote was appointed as chief of Katuchi Station and Madoka was inducted as a police officer last spring. It would be odd not to suspect the circumstances like that. The details were rather persuasive.
でも実際のところはどうなんだろう。
Did Madoka truly pursue Yamote for her sister's sake? And in response, Yamote convinced upper management to choose her for the recommended group? There were certainly clues pointing to that truth, but Tomoe hadn't heard it from the two of them directly, and her suspicions were still a bit too baseless to ask about them herself. And so, she alone was being swayed by the rumors.
そもそもなんでまどかは警察官に？
When Madoka first announced she was going to be a police officer, Tomoe was delighted to learn that her sister was taking her career more seriously. But after hearing these rumors, she was starting to feel the complete opposite. Tomoe had a prejudiced view of Madoka for working at a cabaret club before she became a police officer. And when it was later revealed that she was in a relationship with Chief Yamote, the whole thing was cast in a curious light. But simply thinking about it, she didn't need to become a police officer to buy the chief's favor. Instead, it must have been something much larger and more illicit. She had to understand that she'd be criticized and reproached if it was exposed, so why did she become a police officer?
まあいっか。
Tomoe had always been unable to comprehend Madoka Yamote's relationship, so she constantly pushed back against it. She was only recently came to realize that Madoka truly did have feelings for Yamote, in which case all she could do was tell Madoka everything she needed as her older sister. There was no choice but to believe the rumors weren't true, and watch over her and the girl and her lover.
恋人か。
She suddenly muttered that to nobody in particular. Several men had confessed to Tomoe back when she was a student and even after joining the police force, but even though she had been in several relationships, she truly never had a deep relationship with anybody, even today. It wasn't that she hated men, or was hard to deal with. She just never had a yearning for someone that she could confidently say was love. There was something more important to Tomoe than that. A serious purpose that couldn't escape her mind, even while she was interacting with people around her.
だからあの子には幸せになってもらいたい。私の分まで。
She was certain she couldn't move forward until she settled the past. But she wanted her sister to go on living, thinking of the future. It may be a selfish wish, but there is no obligation for her to choose the same way as life for her sister. Tomoe looked down from the ceiling and opened the desk drawer, then pulled out a file from inside. Inside was a polyethylene storage bag containing the carefully separated pages of a notebook. And that was the only clue Tomoe's father, Yusuke Minai, left behind. I think we're gonna have to take a break here. We're at the hour mark and no chapter break, so in before to 10 more minutes, but whatever. We'll just compensate. Thanks for watching. This has been interesting. A lot of office politics on show, but I'm excited for a mainly Tomoe POV arc. Should be fun. But thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Peace.